I definitely love being around the teens and the younger kids, and I think I learn things from them every single day that I'm with them. So it's a very unique and cool experience.
For many people in the world, there is a moment of clarity when you see the world differently than you saw it previously. Those are the moments when we wake up to life. I'm Rabbi Josh Bennett, and this is Waking Up to Life, a podcast about those moments. Today, I have the honor of celebrating this podcast with Ross Klar, who is the youth director here at Temple Israel. Ross has become not only one of our staff members, but a really good friend to me. And I'm so excited to have you on the program with us.
Thank you for having me, Rabbi Josh. Very kind words. I appreciate it.
So, Ross, usually people come into the podcast and tell me a story of something that happened to them that has changed the way they think about life and see themselves. Your story today is actually something that didn't happen to you. I'd love to have you share with the listeners what didn't happen to you that changed your life.
So when I was a senior in college, I was applying to grad school. Just applied to one grad school. There's a really cool program that I found. And I went and I interviewed. Thought it went really well. A couple weeks go by and I find out I did not get into grad school. And at this point, I had graduated from college and I didn't know where to go from there. And it took reflecting on this podcast to realize that was my moment. And things don't always happen the way you plan. And that's just life. So that's kind of what brought me to here. And if I would have gotten in, it would have been great. I would have felt very good in the moment. I would have gone to school. I would have been on a whole new path. May have been good, may have been bad, but I'm very happy with where I am in life right now, working here at Temple. And I'm grateful that I didn't get in.
So some people would say things happen the way they're supposed to happen, and that's obviously the story that you're sharing here. But let me dive a little bit deeper with you and unpack your story. What did you think you wanted to do?
So kind of went back and forth. I went through 3 different majors in college. I was business, that was hospitality business, and then I went to psychology going into my junior year. So I just needed to get the psychology classes out of the way. I'd done all the prerequisites. And I thought I was going to be a therapist. I thought I kind of played that role with my friends and in life. And I think I had maybe a little bit of an enlightening moment in college where I didn't know what I wanted to do. And landed on, I'm going to transfer my major to psychology and work on that. There's a cool sports psychology program. I've been an avid sports fan my whole life. If you would have asked me in 3rd grade what I wanted to do, I would have said I want to be the GM of the Pistons. Didn't quite get there, but I always, wanted to be in the world of sports. And this was just a very cool program. At the time, there was a basketball player, Markelle Fultz. He's still in the league now, but he was the number 1 pick, superstar in college. And then something just clicked or didn't click where he couldn't play. He sat out for seasons and he's bounced around the league. And at the time, I wanted to solve that. How could this phenomenal talent, clearly could be a great NBA player, just lose it? Yeah, there were injuries, but there was clearly more. And everyone around the league, ESPN, everyone talked about it. And I thought, how cool would it be to be the person to help someone like that at the top of their game kind of come back to that?
So it sounds like actually the universe has been speaking to you all along. You said in college you had to shift and change and be in a different position with your major. And then once again, you get to the grad school moment and the universe speaks to you a second time or a third time or a fourth time and says, hey, Ross, things aren't always as you expect them to be. And actually, in many ways, that's exactly the story that you wanted to solve. A basketball player whose the universe said to him, things aren't the way you thought they were going to be. So I'm wondering, now that you've transitioned and we're lucky enough to have you as our youth director, how do you see this playing out in your everyday life? What's the lesson that you've learned from this that makes you a better youth director? How do you apply that lesson to the work you do with kids?
That's a good question. I think always be ready to pivot and to change. Um, Whether it be on a youth trip where you think something's going to happen and it doesn't, the bus breaks down, the reservation never got booked, the event gets rained out or canceled, and you got 30, 40, 50 kids, you got to do something. You can't, you're in charge of the trip. You have to pivot. Maybe on a Monday night school, you think you're going to have 75 kids come and you have this big whole program and not as many. You always have to be ready for change in your life. Um, I also now feel like I can give that advice to teens. We were just in college acceptance season and it's tough. And I always say to any teen who's going through it, once you graduate college, it's not going to matter what college you didn't get into or got into. You might have been sad you didn't get into this school. Once you go to college and you graduate, it's irrelevant at that point. But in the moment, it's really, really hard. You've worked your whole life towards something. You were a Michigan or Michigan State fan your whole life and you didn't get in. It seems like the end of the world. Just like when I didn't get into grad school, I thought, what am I going to do? I'm 2 months removed from graduation of undergrad at Michigan State. What am I doing now? And it took me a while. I did nothing for a while. And you just kind of keep moving on.
So the skill you're talking about in the psychological medical world, I think is called neuroplasticity. It's our ability for our brains to recreate themselves and shift and change. And the more plastic we allow ourselves to be, the healthier we are as people. That's a skill, though, that you learned not from this experience, I think, in grad school. It's a skill that you've actually carried with you for many years because you were a camp person. So talk a little bit about what it means to be a graduate of the camp world. I know you talk about where you went to camp
Mhm.
and what that means to you, but aren't these the same lessons that we teach campers and counselors to master in those moments?
Yeah. So I went and still go to Camp Tanuga 16 summers so far. Uh, and yeah, that's it. And as a camper, as when I worked in the kitchen, as a counselor, as a youth director, as a program director, as a unit director, it is all about that. I don't know if I can pronounce that word that you just said. Maybe that was in grad school. I would have learned that. But yeah, it is all about adapting, changing. And, when I was program director at a small camp like that, it is every single day coming up with something to entertain the entire camp. Half the camp doesn't want to do this. Half the camp doesn't want to do that. The boys want to do this. The girls want to do that. The older kids, younger kids. And you just got to figure it out. You got to always be on your toes. And if something's not working, you have to know when to change it. I have been in a program. It was my first year as program director, one of the first programs, and I'd been to camp as a camper for many years as a counselor. Thought I can do this. I've seen it. The program was going terrible. Nobody was interested. I felt so embarrassed and anxious, and it's 7:30. I got to entertain everyone until 9:30. What am I going to do? And I just kind of pushed through. I asked people for help, the older campers. I said, you guys got to give me some enthusiasm here. I'm losing people. Please help me. And I got through it. And that helped me till today of when you get into those moments of, oh my God, what is happening? What do I do? It's going to be fine. You just got to go through it. It's not the end of the world if somebody, isn't totally entertained 24/7. Um, but it's all I've any in any field in life, you got to have that skill. and learn how to fight through those moments.
So the message keeps coming back to us over and over again. With a little bit of creativity, we can get through anything. And there's no moment, whether it's a program or a career choice or a college choice, that we can't overcome with just a little bit of patience and understanding that the universe is on our side. Now, people don't know this yet about you, but I'm about to expose you not only as an incredible youth director, but also as a very competent baker. Ross, you have one of the best chocolate chip cookie recipes out there. What I find most interesting about this conversation is that, on the one hand, part of your life, part of your brain talks about that flexibility for programming and skills. And as a baker, you are very rigid about the recipe and the process, such that if you don't do it according to the rules, the cookies don't come out as well. So how do you balance those two almost opposite approaches to the world? One that allows for creativity and a free flow of ideas, and the other that is so rigid, there's no alternatives.
Well, I think it's trial and error with cookies or baking. The first time you do it, you might try to get creative and think, oh, I like this and this in the cookies. Oh, I like my cookies to be chewier. I'm going to throw more brown sugar and I'm going to try this and that. And then they come out and they're not good, or there's something's wrong with them. And it gets to the point where you get creative and you switch around how much flour and how much baking soda and how much vanilla and everything you use, to eventually now the recipe I have, which wasn't originally mine, but it's now morphed into mine. Now I am rigid. I will never deviate from the recipe that I use for those.
So this is the aha moment for me in this podcast. We have to be creative. We have to allow ourselves permission to evolve and to change. And then we get to something that's really, really good. And at that point, it's okay to stay focused on the best product. I can't help but think about, in Judaism, this is the story of our ancestors. They're wandering from slavery in Egypt to freedom in the Promised Land. And those 40 years wandering in the desert is actually the experimental process where Moses is developing a leadership style. And at one point, he has to appoint magistrates to help him because he realizes he can't do it alone. What you're saying is you need to give yourself space to become, to evolve, to grow, and then you can lock it in the places where you found perfection. And I don't want to call your cookies perfect, but they're pretty darn
You
close.
can call them perfect. It's okay.
They're pretty good. So are there other, where do you think you are in that evolution personally? And what's to be learned? How old are you?
28.
You're 28. So at what point can you declare victory over something bigger than a recipe?
I don't know if you ever can declare full victory. I think you can always, even my cookies you say are perfect, and I like that compliment. I'm sure there's something I could do to improve them, and I'm sure there's always something. I think I'm a pretty good youth director. I think I can always improve. I think I'm a good unit director and good at programs at camp. You can always improve. So I don't know if there's ever a final, okay, I've done it. This is the perfect way. This is how it needs to be done. Because maybe I do find that for me, but I'm not going to be the youth director for life. And if I don't always leave wiggle room and leave it for the next person to know how to grow and to be a great youth director or whatever they are, then I'd be doing a disservice. I think it's different for everyone.
So what you've said today really strikes me as important to understand. We have to give ourselves grace to be able to be evolving human beings, to become the best that we can be. We also can't say that we are the best, right? We have to always leave space for improvement, growth, and evolution. I wonder what you can talk about now, tell the listeners about how this affects relationships with other people. Do you find yourself demanding of others that they're also in this process? Is that important?
Yes and no. I think just understanding that everyone is so different and everybody works at their own pace and everyone's mind is completely different. And some people may not have that understanding or that enlightenment of things not always going their way, being able to adapt. Some people think that they can't do it. So I think I'd like to think that I'm a very patient person with people and understanding, um, and at the same time want great for other people and want other people to succeed and thrive in whatever they're doing.
So I think we've uncovered in this short conversation why, Ross, so many of our teenagers say that you are an outstanding youth director. It's not that you're the coolest guy out there who likes all the same things. You don't always speak the same language. In fact, just recently we found out that you and I are old compared to some of the teenagers, but you do have a sense of respect for other people being somewhere on their own journey. And I think that that's really important as we build friendships and relationships. Everybody is going to go through that journey. And if we're lucky enough, like you are with our teenagers here at Temple Israel, to intersect, we can influence. And it almost doesn't matter who's the older or more experienced. We can all learn from one another. So I really just love what you've shared with us. And I'm so appreciative, not only of the podcast today, but of your attitude that I think makes Temple Israel a much better youth program than we were even before you got here.
I appreciate that, and I hope I can continue like that and continue to grow. Uh, I definitely love being around the teens and the younger kids, and I think they also I learn things from them every single day that I'm with them. So it's a very unique and cool experience.
That's awesome. Well, we are nearing the end of the podcast.
It's gone by fast.
It has gone by fast. And as you probably know, if you've listened to any other episodes, at the end of every podcast, I ask my guests to share something that you may be reading or watching on television or listening to that is affecting the way you're thinking about the world right now that you might want to share with us.
I have, I don't know when this is going to air, but the finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm just aired on Sunday. And it is inspired. I haven't not currently watching all of it, but it's inspired me to now go back and do the binge watch. I'm probably due. I probably only have seen every episode, 20 to 30 times. But I think that relating that back to, something else, and just Larry David did 8 seasons of Curb, I think once every year, took 6 years off, said he's never going to do it again. Comes back, does another season, takes 2 more years off, comes back, does another season, and did this 3 or 4 times. Now he's on season 12, and this is supposedly the end. So I think no matter where you think you are in life, you can always come back for more. You can always come back to the thing you love. And if you want to ever stop that, I think that's okay.
It's a great message. I'm also hopeful that Larry David will hear this podcast and will agree to be a guest after Ross. We'll put him on the next episode.
Can I ask you a question? Do we have time?
Sure.
Do you watch Curb?
I have watched Curb. I'm not an avid watcher listener, but I have watched several episodes. Usually when people tell me I have to see it because it's a commentary on the world.
Okay, well, I have something for you then. I was prepared for this.
So Ross, just for listeners, Ross has pulled out a piece of handwritten paper from his pocket, and here it goes.
So this is the Curb list. I start writing out, I didn't want to give you 50 episodes, but I wanted to give you the episodes I think you need to watch. And I started doing a couple episodes from each season. And once I got to season 5, I couldn't do it anymore. I just wrote all season 5, all season 6, 7, 8, 9 to 12 optional. So I'm going to give this to you. This is your homework for next time I'm on the podcast, and you can tell me your thoughts.
So I just want people to hear, opening up the paper and reading Curb List Season 1, Episode 1, The Pants Tent. Season 1, Episode 8, Beloved Aunt. It's a listing of about 20 episodes that I should watch. I'll be listing these episodes in the description of this podcast so everybody can join me on my journey to understand and know Curb Your Enthusiasm. Ross Klar, it has been a real pleasure, a joy to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So this brings up the end of another episode of Waking Up to Life, 18 Minutes with Rabbi Josh. I hope you've learned something today. I hope you've taken away something from our conversation. And in the meantime, I hope you will continue growing, evolving, and waking up to life.